Okay. Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to, again, present to your people. I just ask that someone would get just a word like no, from this presentation, if nothing else. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to say for sure that I understand that this is a lot this weekend, but I want you to be curious enough to go and learn as much as you can about these concepts that I'm sharing. I truly believe this is the science of salvation. We can pray till the cows come home, but if you're triggered, if you are that hardwired experience in your body, the body keeps the score. You can tell me how much you love God and how much you want to trust him, and we love that song, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus," but trust is an experience. It's not just words, it's an experience. You have to have an experience where God shows up, and he does it with flesh and blood people. And sometimes he doesn't, but sometimes he does. And be open to however he wants to convince your heart that he is trustworthy. This talk is, again, very important. And we started adding this to our rotation of talks because we see the needs are so pronounced, especially among Christian people. We really somehow think not saying no is a good thing, and we think somehow just moving forward in spite of our fatigue is a good thing. And I just want to challenge you with that as we walk through this. It's really, really very important to understand the significance of boundaries. You know, this is, I forgot to put where, I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. That's what Nehemiah says. I think it's 6. Nehemiah said that when they were, his enemies were trying to get him to come down. He said, no can do. Not going to do it. Sorry, not going to happen. And what are boundaries? So when you think of boundaries, what are they? And they are invisible demarcations between you and someone else, between what's mine and what's yours. And another definition, guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify a safe and permissible ways for people to behave around them. And they're barriers that keep the good, positive, helpful things in and bad, negative, harmful things out. And I love this depiction. Boundaries are like a fence around my yard that keeps my stuff in and other people's stuff out. A line beyond which I won't go and beyond which others are not allowed to go with me. What's the reason why we struggle to set healthy boundaries? And simply put, trauma and abuse, and not having our emotional needs met as children. When those needs are not met, when we don't have a sense of who we are, our value and our worth, we are going to struggle. And we've talked a lot about other people defining who we are and giving them permission to define who we are. I love this, and so you know this verse, right? I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Codependent, selflessness. This is what a codependent, and a codependent is a person who has difficulty setting boundaries. This is their interpretation of this verse. I have been crucified without Christ. It is no longer I who live, but others live in me. In the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the power of others who didn't love me well and sacrificed me to get their needs met. I love that. We use that word codependent. And so I want you to just take a few minutes. I have about 3 or 4 slides here, and I want you to just make note of how many of these you answer in the affirmative. Which ones do you see yourself in? If you can look at these and say, oh yeah, I do that, let's do that. You are easily absorbed by the pain and problems of others. You submerge yourself in fixing and rescuing needy people. You depend on other sources outside of yourself for meaning, identity, and value. How many did you check off on that screen? You don't have to tell me, but just think about it. So we got 3 on that screen. You take care of other people's pains and problems while ignoring your own. You help others at your own risk, at your own expense, or the expense of your family. You say yes when you mean no. Here's a scriptural mandate, lest you think that it's unscriptural to set boundaries. 6:3, that's what it is. I'm doing a great work, Nehemiah. And the word says, simply yet let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one, Matthew 5:37. As for a person who stirs up division after warning him once and then twice, have nothing more to do with him. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Oh, look at this. There's a whole slide on how Jesus set boundaries. This is what he did. He set boundaries with his parents, with John the Baptist, with Satan, with the crowds, with his mother, with Pilate, and yes, even with his disciples. So we have an example of Jesus himself setting boundaries. Look at this thought. Look at this. Every human being is endowed with individuality, power to think, and to do. Each has an individuality separate and distinct from all others. The interests most vital to you are in your own keeping. Lacking healthy boundaries results in losing respect of yourself and others, losing of control of life direction and purpose, overworking, unmet goals, and the stress of chaos can lead to hopelessness, depression, or anxiety. Engaging in unclear communication and miscommunication, putting aside values and deeply held beliefs, increasing stress of all kinds. When you say yes when you really mean no, and add something to your plate that you don't have room for, that's very stressful, needless to say. Now, this is what healthy and unhealthy boundaries look like. Healthy boundaries, you notice the dotted lines around healthy boundaries. And that simply means that there are some things I can let in, and there are other things I can let out, and some things can get in, some things can't. Someone who has limited or non-existent boundaries, you see how far apart those markers are. And someone who has loose or porous boundaries, there are even more of them, but they still are too many. I still let too many things in, and I let too many things out. For many of us, we have a rigid wall around us, and nothing will get in or nothing will get out. I've heard people say, well, man, this person was abused, why didn't they tell anybody? Well, because they had rigid boundaries, and nothing was able to get in or get out. And with that, perhaps because of fear, but that's what a wall looks like. Nothing gets in or nothing gets out. What do boundaries do? They provide a means of protecting myself, check this out, without offending others. They inform me how to respond when someone steps outside of those limits. When I know when I have my vision and my mission statement all lined up and I know where I am, and you come and you try to put something on my plate, I can say, oops, that's not where I am, that's not my vision, that's not where God is calling me. I know I can't do that. So my boundaries help me to respond when someone steps outside of those limits very, very effectively. They keep me safe when I let people know what is okay and to say and to do, or what I will not accept or tolerate. It reminds me of a saying that Maya Angelou said, you teach people how to treat you. You teach people. So if you don't like how you're being treated, look at your instruction, and you can change that instruction. And when I set a boundary, when I have good boundaries, they make me a good steward of the gifts that God has given me. These are types of boundaries, and I'm sorry you can't see them. I remember when I first saw this slide, I usually, I knew of a couple of them, but I love the idea that there are more than just the few that I understood. And there are mental boundaries, emotional boundaries, material boundaries, internal, physical, conversational, and time boundaries. I know it's very effective for me. I have people who want to talk a lot. I have a couple friends who really talk a lot. I'll preface the conversation, start the conversation off, hey, I only got 15 minutes, if that's the case. If I have more time, that's fine, but if I only have 15 minutes, I will say that. So I set a time boundary. And if I have, a physical boundary, this is how close you can come to me, and no closer. It's really very important. Emotional boundaries. It's not okay for you to treat me this way, and being able to say that. Really very important. And if you were to see the slide, and if you get the slideshow, you'll see material inside those those pies, if you please. What do boundaries include? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. What I think, how I feel, what I do, how I look, what I say, how I manage my time and my money, my values, my standards, my body, my health, my belongings, my friends, and family, my personal problems, my child-rearing practices, my political and religious beliefs. Those are my boundaries. You believe that you should not drink juice. Great. Great for you. I don't have a problem drinking juice. It's my boundary. Not bad, not good, just it is what it is. These are boundaries. This is what do they include. And people who lack boundaries, if they grew up in an environment where they were unprotected, i.e. nobody protected them as a child, they're easily offended, they're hypersensitive, they are avoidant, they're fearful, they're rigid in how they view life and how they view things. They're ultra cautious, and they are defensive. If they are uncontained, meaning that they could just do whatever they wanted to do, nobody set boundaries for them. They are offensive, insensitive, engulfing, rageful, chaotic. They can take risk, and they also are invasive. People who lack boundaries share too much too soon, or at the other end of the spectrum, they close themselves off by not expressing their needs and their wants, and they feel responsible for others' happiness. I remember one of comment that David made when he asked me to marry him. He said, "You're not responsible for my happiness. I'm responsible for my own happiness." And I thought, well, that's not what the romance novels and everybody says, I gotta make you happy. No, I'm not responsible for your happiness. You're not responsible for my happiness. I get to choose whether I'm gonna be happy. I get to do that. And I never forgot that conversation, and it's very, very important to understand. I'm not responsible for your feelings and your feelings at all. I'm responsible for mine, my feelings, not yours. Results of having unhealthy boundaries. You resist saying no for fear of rejection or abandonment. If we were to really pause and think about it, we really struggle to say no because you're going to leave me. And that's a huge issue. Remember, wired into our bodies is this sense that if you leave me, I'm going to be all by myself and I won't be able to tolerate being alone. And then I develop a weak sense of identity basing how I feel about myself on how other people treat me. Well, if you treat me bad, that does not say anything about my value and my worth. David and I, we just recently did a marriage retreat, and we always talk about a posture we have assumed in our marriage through the years, and that is that we don't really keep secrets. And if he's attracted to somebody, he will tell me, and if I'm attracted to somebody, I will tell him. And people like gulp and say, "What?" And when there have been about 3 or 4 times, David has come to me and said, "I want you to know that I'm attracted to this person at church." And I say, "Okay." That has absolutely nothing to do with my value and my worth and how I look. Absolutely nothing. In fact, when I know who it is, I have a clue. Oh, you're attracted to her. We are attracted to somebody about as healthy as we are. And you want to know how healthy you are, look at your relationships. And we also, I can see why you're attracted to her because she's like your mama. And you're trying to fix your mama again. unconsciously. Oh, it makes sense to me. Has nothing to do with what I look like. Absolutely nothing. And we did it. It was a talk of the retreat. What? I can't believe you guys do that. Well, now, if you are hiding, I bought something and I put it in the closet and I pulled it out a month later, and my husband says, oh, that looks like a new dress. And I said, oh, this old thing? Oh, yeah, I had that for a long time. If you're still doing that, you cannot step up and start talking about this level of vulnerability, right? So you got to start where you are. But we have made that a condition of our relationship. It has nothing to do with me, the people he's attracted to. And likewise, guess who I'm attracted to? Now, those of you who heard me, guess what kind of person I would be attracted to? A dark-skinned, chunky black man. And don't let him be sharp, because my daddy was sharp. Don't let him be sharp. But I know that's my dysfunction. That's my little girl saying, Daddy, will you love me? I know that. And so I don't have to do anything with that, right? I don't have to do a thing with that, because I know what's going on. That's why I'm asking you to consider doing this work so you too can have that freedom. And so, I'll tell you this real quick. So, married 2 years, about 6 weeks after we were married, I got pregnant, and so we had this little baby, cutest little boy, Michael. You've seen him, and he's just cute as he can be. And I am madly in love with my husband, and I told him one time, listen, if you die, I'm going to get in the casket with you. And he looked at me like, what? What are you talking about? I don't know if I can make it without you. You were a competent woman before I met you. You're going to be all right. And so, anyway, that's where I was. But I started dreaming about being married to black men. First, it was a doctor, it was an attorney, it was a businessman, and the nature of dreams, the nature of dreams is pay attention to how you feel when you wake up, because that's where the gift is. And so I was mad when I woke up. I didn't want the dream to come to an end. It's like, man, I'm awake. And so, don't judge me, y'all. So I kept having this dream. You know, it was like a recurring dream, and it was always a successful, you know, black man, you know, dark-skinned, chunky black man, and all of that. And so I was like, I was really distressed. I'm 2 years married. What in the world? Where is this coming from? And so the Lord said to me, tell David. I said, I'm not telling David I want to be married to a black man. Absolutely not. And so the dreams kept coming. He told me what to do, and the dreams kept coming. So finally, I got up the courage to say, honey, I got something to tell you. Okay, what is it, sweetheart? I want you to know that I've had these recurring dreams, and I told him about the nature of the dreams. And he said, as John identified, he said, thank you so much for sharing with me. I appreciate it. I'm hurt, but thank you for sharing with me. And he said, but I understand why. I had an aunt who had a white man who was just enamored with her, set her up, moved her out of the projects, put her in a home in the suburbs. Her kids went to a great school, and she became the power broker in the family. And so my dad told me, I mentioned that I was damaged goods and I would not get married, and because nobody would want me. And so I proved him wrong. I married this really nice man, educated man, and but my status in the family was unchanged. And so the dreams were, well, okay, I've proven that I can get married. Now, if I could get married to an educated black man, maybe my status would change. He's sharing all this with me. That's what's going on. And as soon as he's saying all this, I'm like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. So we prayed and asked God to, you know, help me to forgive my family for not seeing me and valuing me and blah, blah, blah. And so after we prayed, he said, I'm looking forward to the time, just like this. I'm looking forward to the time when, one day you'll be married to me in your dreams, right? And I said, okay, honey. I'm tearful and all that. So, a few weeks passed, and I dreamed that I was married to a white man. He didn't have a face, but it was a white man. And I rolled over. David, guess what? I wake him up. Guess what? I'm married to a white man. Praise the Lord, honey. Praise the Lord. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. A few weeks pass. I'm married to David. Honey, guess what? I'm married to you in my dreams, and I'm just so excited, and I'm just like tearful. Praise the Lord, honey. Praise the Lord. But I share that for a couple reasons. Number one, because my dreams had nothing to do with him. It was about my stuff I was working out. And we created this environment in our marriage where we could come and talk about hard things to each other. And as a result of that, I got some answers. And it was so funny because the dream subsided. Once I understood what was going on and got some insight into my own struggle and my own desire to be accepted by my family, those things dissipated. So anyway, so having unhealthy boundaries, having a weak sense of identity, basing how we feel on other people, what they think about us, how they treat us, and allow others to make decisions for us, consequently feeling powerless, never, ever, ever a good thing. Those things happen in relationship. And we're going to skip over this next slide because we do this with pastoral families, and we talk. You'd be surprised. John, you don't have that problem, do you? You set boundaries, buddy? Okay. I'm real big on that. We really talk a lot about that, especially with pastors, because, church people, we've gone to places, we do pastors' retreats, and, church people say, well, you should be at my beck and call all the time. Wrong answer. Absolutely, wrong answer. The pecking order is God, my family, and then the church. Don't get it twisted. Right? And so there are people who do, in fact, in their not having a sense of who they are, do get it, in fact, messed up. These are boundaries, again, in pastoral families. Am I safe for them? Are they safe for me? And when you talk about people, working with people, I really need to know, is it a good thing that I am safe for people I work with? And I've always appreciated through the years my experience of Pastor John is he has a good, strong sense of, this is how I'm going to move around with other women. This is what's going to be best. So there won't be any questions. There won't be he said, she said, none of that. You know where I stand. And there are many pastors who have struggles with that. So it's really important. How important is self-care? If I love myself, I will care for myself. I will take time for true Sabbath rest each week. Again, for pastoral families, that's often very difficult because the Sabbath is when they work. But I will carve out time for God, my family, and myself. It's not being selfish. The second great commandment is love thy neighbor as you love yourself. How many of us say, I don't have time to exercise? Mm-hmm. How many of us say, well, I would eat right, but it just takes so much energy, takes so much time. It's much easier to grab a sandwich and, all of that. We do those things, right? I know I should go to bed early. We go to bed at 9 in our house, and people tease us all the time. Oh, we can't call the Sedlaceks because they are in bed. Absolutely, do not call because we're in bed. And we will call you first thing in the morning. We'll call you at 5. But don't call me because I'm not answering, right? And so it's just good. I know who I am. I know what works best for me. I get better rest on this side of midnight than on the other side of midnight. So knowing that. But how are you with your own self-care? Good question, isn't it? Okay, so these are barriers to boundary setting. The lived experience of trauma. Remember, in our family, when we have been traumatized, if we live trauma, we have not worked through that trauma experience. And I'm going to talk about this in the morning in a more, I alluded to it last night, but I'm going to talk about fragmentation of memories tomorrow. I'm going to add that into our talk. But in my family, if I have not had someone who respects boundaries and people have done to me and my body something I don't want to have done, I have difficulty setting boundaries. If in my community boundaries are not respected, it's going to be difficult. And even environmentally, in some communities, of course, there's going to be some problems. And when I don't set boundaries, I communicate that I don't have a right to have a healthy, well-differentiated sense of self. My identity, my sense of identity is wrapped up in what I give and receive from others. Now, I'm going to say this, and you think about this for a minute. Your capacity to give is based on your capacity to receive. People say, well, I love to give. I'll give, and, they'll be the first to volunteer and all that. But when you turn around and try to give to them, they say, oh, no. I'm good. You don't have to do that. Or, no, I don't really need anything. I don't know if there are any people like that in this audience, but we are really big at giving and not really good at receiving. Back to that compliment business. I can give you a compliment all day. You turn around and try to give me a compliment, and I'm going to rebuff it. Your capacity to give is based on your capacity to receive. They come from the same place. So if you got a little capacity to give, to receive, you got a little capacity to give. I don't care how much you think you're giving, but that's really the truth. Make sense? If I love myself, I will care for myself. I will take, did I do that? Oh, the wrong button. Okay. The reason why we struggle to set boundaries, I fear you're going to reject me, and ultimately you're going to abandon me. How many of you consider confrontation bad? The word is not a bad word. Confrontation is not a bad word, but we have cast it in such a bad word. When I confront you about how much you love me, if I confront you about how you mistreat me, the same action. I am talking to you directly about what you are or what you are not doing. It's not bad, but we have this thing about confrontation, and we think it's somehow we're going to be taken out by it or we're not going to survive, and that's not true. Fear of being selfish. This is a big one. I don't want you to think I'm selfish. Number one, I can't control what you think. Do you hear me? Did you hear me? I cannot control what you think. But you get to think I'm selfish if you want to. My husband has great boundaries, and I'm sure that comes from a family of 15, growing up with a family of 15. He'll tell me, I'm doing this right now. But I want you to do what I want you to do. Thank you so much for sharing, but I'm doing this right now. And that's okay. He's got this is my boundary. It's a good thing. And am I going to love him any less? No. And when the guilt thing, really, guilt, we talked about guilt, and then how many of you are here shoulds when you are talking? I should do this, I should do that. Any of you all should all over yourself? Yeah. Yeah. Should. Yeah. 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 When you hear the should, you should stop. Right then and there. Again, that's not coming from a good place. Okay? A false sense of guilt, for sure. Okay, so what happens now in terms of domestic violence? If you are dealing with someone who's physically dangerous or threatening to you, it may not be safe to set explicit boundaries with them. If you are in this situation, it can be helpful to work with a counselor, a therapist, or advocate to create a safety plan, and boundary setting may be a part of this. Since the pandemic, the numbers of domestic violence have been off the chain, and we know the most dangerous time for a woman is when she is preparing to leave. That is the most dangerous time. And so it would not be wise to say, I'm setting these really strong boundaries with somebody who already has struggles with control and they think you belong to them. So it's not a good thing to do that, but in your heart you can set a boundary. And as you need to and as you are able, you can set a boundary for sure. Okay, so here's a boundary of self-assessment, real quick. Do you tend to say yes when you want to say no? Yes. Do you hate and often avoid saying no just to keep the peace or to risk hurting someone's feelings? Any takers? Okay. Now, again, I am not responsible for your feelings. What I am responsible for is to say it so you can hear me, but I'm not responsible for your feelings. I never talked to David about money at night. It's not his best time. I certainly don't mind spending money. He's a little more thoughtful about it. So I'm not going to talk to him about it at night. So I'm going to wait until there's a time when I know he can hear me, that I'm going to talk about it. If I want to talk to him about something he's done, I want to pick a time when he can hear me. Not going to hear me at 9 o'clock because he's in bed or almost in bed if he's not, so it's not going to work. So I'm not going to talk to him just any time. So I'm responsible for picking and choosing how I say it, but I'm not responsible for what you do with it. I could say it in the nicest and sweetest way, but if you have that template going in your head and you have that filter on, you're going to hear me and you're going to say, well, why are you saying it that way? You sound so nasty. And I know I'm not, right? And so, but I'm not responsible for your feelings. I am responsible for saying it so you can hear me. Do you feel that sometimes have the feeling that church members are taking advantage of you? Y'all have nominating periods and, yeah, okay. And can you say no? Yeah. Oh, okay. You want me to put my knife in, Pastor John? Okay. 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 Now, how about this? Again, this is when we talk about people who are workaholics, for example. How often does your spouse or your children complain about you spending a lot of time away from home or spending a time? You do know we have an epidemic of phone addiction, don't you? On a serious note, we do. We do. So how many people have you, like, can you put your phone down and talk to me? All right? Do you neglect nurturing your own health by trying to be all things to all people? Okay, this is a boundary learning activity, and we won't have time to go through this, so I'm just going to skip through this real quick. Oh, you want me to? Okay. You good? I love this exercise when we do it, when we have time. It's so interesting to see people's personal boundaries and where they set them. Sometimes people will allow you all up. They won't say stop until you get, you're uncomfortable, the person walking toward them, or the other way around. People may stop their boundary may be way out in left field. You stop, you're too close. It's just very interesting to watch how this plays out. But again, we didn't have time, but please take note of that. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, I like this exercise. I like this idea about understanding big versus little boundaries. And so in the big boundaries, this is what I will absolutely not tolerate causing a relationship to end. If you in a marriage, for example, or you're in a relationship having an affair, using illicit drugs, or acting abusively, hurting your children or your pets. Those are all big boundaries that you absolutely cannot violate. If you do, this is going to be a relationship killer. Little boundaries or smaller boundaries are a little different. These are preferences or wishes. You have preferences where you would prefer not to go. I would prefer not to go to a town. I would prefer. I don't want to talk about food, but I would prefer not to go golfing. Though you might like golfing, but it's not a big deal for me. I prefer not to go. It's not a deal breaker, but please don't talk to others about things we have not first talked about. That could be a smaller boundary you set in your relationship. You can have relationships where you talk to your friends for clarity and, for support, but let's talk amongst ourselves first, and then you can do that. I prefer you not watch TV in the bedroom or just before we go to bed, especially in the bedroom. I would love for you to join me to eat breakfast every morning. Those are smaller boundaries. Those are just preferences. I got plenty of funny stories just in case you didn't know. One time we went to Canada and David forgot his tie. And, I've done my best to keep him being nice, right? He forgot his tie. So we were with an elderly white couple. And the gentleman so graciously said, "Oh, David, you can borrow one of my ties." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so the guy comes out with a tablecloth, tie this wide, right? Huge tie. He's an old man, right? And so David thanked him graciously. And so we got behind closed doors. It's like, "You cannot wear this tie." He gave it to, "You can't wear this tie." Thank you for sharing. "Look at it, it's a tablecloth." Thank you for sharing, but I'm going to wear this tie. "What will people think of me?" Nothing. I got the tie on. And about 6 months ago, we were at the breakfast table, and I cereal with my milk, and David likes a little milk with his cereal, and I happened to look over in his bowl, and I just casually said, "You need more milk in your cereal." And he looked at me and he said, "Thank you so much for sharing." No, I'm serious. You need more milk in your cereal. Really, I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing. I can't believe you're not going to do that. No, I'm not. I'm fine. And it's like, you are crazy. I mean, I knew I was being ridiculous, right? It was his bowl of cereal. He gets to eat his bowl of cereal the way he wants to eat his bowl of cereal. Does saying no mean I'm not a nice person? Absolutely not. Okay, this is the big one. When you say no, do you feel the need to explain yourself? Well, I'm saying no, but I'm saying no because I can't do, I got to go home and do whatever, and you go through this big, long explanation, as opposed to, no, that's not going to work for me. And do you struggle saying no? Do you really, no, that just, those are very important two letters put together. No. Please take pictures of this. I will pause as long as you need me to. So these are some cues, some phrases that will work for you. My favorite one up there is, "I'm sorry." Oh, it might be on the next one. Yeah, it is. This is not going to work for me. That's my favorite one. "Thank you for offering, but it's just not going to work for me at this time. And if I have to sound like a broken record, I will do that. I'm sorry, it just won't work for me. And I would love to, my heart is in the right place. I would love to help you, but it won't work." Aren't those great lines?
I like the and in there, or really don't like the and.
And you don't like the what?
The and. I would love to do this, and I made a commitment to not take on it. What happened to the word but?
Yeah. I like that. I will change that. I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you, April.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. We've gone through these, and I look at them too, and I don't know about this one, but yeah, that one is really good. This won't fit my schedule right now. Again, my heart's in the right place. I would want to, but it just won't work for me right now. What's wrong with telling people that when it really won't work for you? And to attempt to make it work will really put you at a disadvantage. How about this one?
When our daughter was 2.5 years old, she said to her little brother, "Jason, that is not acceptable."
Not. Yeah. Y'all took pictures of this, right? Okay. Okay. Now, again, I don't know if we'll have time to do this because I want to leave time for questions. But do you know that the part of your brain that responds to no is not the same part of your brain that responds to yes? So if I'm learning to set boundaries and I say, no, 7 times, in fact, it's suggested 7 times, that's different, a different part of my brain lights up. If you did a PET scan, a CAT scan, not a CAT scan, but a PET scan, or some of those fancy, it's a different part of my brain that responds to it than if you say yes. That has powerful ramifications. So if I say to myself, no, I can't pass this test, 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 versus yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can. Entirely different parts of the brain. And it's interesting watching people say no when we've done this exercise, when we've had time. You know, people's like, it was really hard for me to say no so many times. It was really, really hard. Yeah. This is about as close to a formula as you will ever get from the Sedlaceks, and it's this one. When you do blank, I feel X because of this, will you? When you didn't put your clothes away, son, I felt unloved. And we oftentimes have a hard time identifying what we feel. And I suggest people pull out a feeling wheel, feeling chart, and look at some feelings. We have a hard time. How'd you feel? I don't know. We can tell people how we think, but we can't tell people how we feel. So when you say, I think that, or I feel that, when you say, I feel that, you're not saying how you feel. When you say, I think that, if I ask you how, people say it all the time. I hate to blow your bubble. Listen, you listen very attentively. People, well, how'd you feel about so-and-so and so? Well, I felt like, and then they'll tell how they'll give thoughts as opposed to feelings. But when you did this, I feel disrespected because I asked you not to do this. Will you please not do this? I love this idea. These are just real simple. So I'm telling you, this is the behavior. This is how I feel about the behavior. And I feel about the behavior because of this. And this is what I want you to do in my attempts to set boundaries. Boundary setting involves adjusting and readjusting the line between what you want and need and what the people close to you want and need. And remember when we talked about boundaries, when you have healthy boundaries, they're semi-permeable. Some things get in, some things get out. I can say absolutely no today because it's Friday and I have X, Y, Z to do, whereas on Monday I could say yes because I have my schedule's a little more flexible, and so I can change my schedule based on your need and also based on what I need, just depending upon where it is. And so it's not a bad thing; it's a good thing. But that's a part of creating healthy boundaries. But more importantly, it's about understanding. It's a mindset reset. It's understanding the moral mandate to set boundaries, to release guilt and honor God's call on your life. Realize that every yes is a no to something else. When I think about that, every yes to spending a half hour on social media is a no to really beefing up my calligraphy skills. That when I do it that way, when I put those two together, it's like, oh, I'm saying yes to this and no to that. It really is an important thing to do. So it's a mindset reset for sure. And I'm almost finished here. I want to talk about caretaking and what that means. Caretaking is doing something for another person that he should be doing for themselves, trying to solve their problems without being asked, minding their business, violating their boundaries in order to rescue them, managing their life and or monitoring their conscience. That's caretaking. We're not called to caretake anybody. We're called sometimes to do caregiving, but not caretaking. Then there's this negative control. Using one's superior rank, size, gender, intelligence, education, seniority, strength, or holiness to legislate another person's beliefs or behaviors. Now, we've talked about this in terms of even parenting. How do you can get engaged in negative control in terms of parenting your children, and how can you avoid that? How can you engage your child's right to choose with restrictions, i.e., where you're going to have mashed potatoes because that's on the menu. You get to choose whether you're going to have gravy on your mashed potatoes. But mashed potatoes are on the menu, but you have the option. You want gravy or not? That's not negative control. You're going to have mashed potatoes and gravy. What if they don't want gravy? Yes, but you got to have the mashed potatoes because they're on the menu, and it's part of your well-balanced diet. But whether you want gravy, it's not a deal breaker. How can we help our children and not engage in negative control? Kids have a right to say no. Fascinating, again, research, when kids engage in no, it's not that they are trying to disrespect us and not do what we say. The neural pathways are not strong enough for them to remember what you say. There are kids who are strong-willed and they will test your limits. I'm not talking about those kinds of things, but when we look at kids, we think, I've heard people ascribe adult-like motives to kids. This kid is really hard-headed. I told them not to do this, and they did it anyway. I'm talking about a 2-year-old or 18-month-old. Their brains are not developed enough to do that. And so how can you help our kids? How can we help our kids and not be getting engaged in negative controlling? As a parent, of course, we have the power dynamic to contend with. We are the parent, they are the little ones with no experience, but how can we help them with boundaries, with parameters involved for them to make decisions on their own? That's part of growth and development. How can we do that? Okay, so this is really important. People who struggle with boundaries, I've had people say, well, what if they cross my boundaries? Then if they cross your boundaries, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Well, that's something you need to think about. If you set a boundary and that person violates your boundaries, you need to think about it, and then you need to convey what you're going to do. If you choose to not wash dishes, Michael, before you go to bed, then I'm going to wake you up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you'll have to wash dishes before school. That's what you need to know. If you continue to call me after 9, please know I'm not going to answer the call, and may not return your call right away because you have violated what I've asked you not to do. This is really very important to think about. If somebody is going to keep violating your boundaries, well, I told them to stop. I told them don't keep doing it. Okay, you told them. Well, what are the consequences after you've told them? You got to have a consequences in mind. You have to think about what those consequences may be. And so that's the end of this presentation. I do have a list of resources here. Some of you all have asked about our books. Let me give you, this is the website. Please take a picture of this. This is a website. You can buy from Amazon, but Amazon kills me when you do it from them. I will send you a book, and I'll do free shipping as well. It's cheaper for me to do that than for you to go to Amazon. Jeff Bezos is rich because he's got a good business model. And so if you're interested in a book and a workbook, you can check our website for the book and the workbook. And we also have a healing call at 7 o'clock on Sabbath morning where we talk through, we'll take a subject and will present 10, 15 minutes, and then people will talk about how this applies to them. We've been doing this for about 12 years, and we have people calling in from all over the country. You're welcome to join us. It's at 7 o'clock. That's the number on the, I didn't put the code, 203-255 is the code. I'm sorry, didn't do that for the calls. But we have that call. If you are interested, you're welcome to join us. You can come. Yeah, so you have to have an access code, and it's 203-255. And please I couldn't blow this up any larger, but please take a picture of this. Dan Allender wrote the book on the wounded heart. He is the guru around sex addiction. He wrote the first book. We all refer to him. Extraordinary Relationships is an outstanding book. People I counsel, do marriage counseling with, I have them buy this book and read it. I have each of them buy a book and read it and understand. If you really want to be healthy, go back to your family of origin and practice being healthy there. What we know is that two things. We know that if I put you in a circle, if I put you in a community with more than 3 people, you are automatically going to act the way you did in your family of origin.
In a group of what?
More than 3 people. So in this church meeting, in your board meetings, in your women's ministry meetings, wherever you are, people automatically, unconsciously remember it's wired here. And when we talk about community tomorrow, you'll understand even more. You're automatically going to do that. And if you want to be healthy, you got to go back to your family of origin, take all the things that you've learned to be healthy. If I can stand up to my friends and, set boundaries with them, but if I go home and can't set boundaries with my parents or my siblings, it's going to be a problem. And so where you're going to get your most growth is to be able to take all the things you've learned and go back home and practice. And this is a little tidbit. I just like to throw this out because I think this is fascinating. Anyway, the books. Those are the books there. And then the podcast. His name is not Adam Smith, it's Adam Young, The Place We Find Ourselves. I absolutely love that podcast. That podcast is, I have given many clients that, reference, we'll look at a podcast, go home and listen to it and come back and talk about it. He's a social worker, and he just does a great job of just breaking down very simple, practical, in practical language, mental health principles. He's the one that talks about fragmentation that I'm going to talk about tomorrow with you, and I will tell you that episode so you can go home and listen. But fascinating. Being Known podcast by Kurt Thompson, I told you about him. You can look those up, whichever one you want to look at your podcast. Just great resources. Get educated, people. Get educated. Get educated. Please, please, please. Tidbit. And you'll find this in our book and workbook. And that is social scientists began looking at families as a system. And so this is just fascinating. And a child psychiatrist did this work, Dr. Jerome Balch. I've learned about him in graduate school so many years ago, and I'm glad that he's become more mainstream. And he talked about looking at family and family of origin issues and looking at children. And so when you look at a family as a system, the first task of a system is productivity. So the point of a system is you want it to produce something. So here's the system. You want it to produce something. That's generally the role of the father. Okay? What he has identified is the firstborn, born into a family, takes on and identifies with the father in that task. And any unfinished business the father has, the firstborn will pick it up and try to work it out. That's the firstborn, whether you're male or whether you're female. If you are so two sides to the coin, you can either be really close to your father or you're going to war with your father. That's the first task. That's the daddy's role. And the first child born into the system will pick up, identify with the father, and carry any unfinished business of the father. The second task is emotional maintenance. That's the role of a mother. The second-born child will identify, connect with, develop a bond with the mother. They will either be at war with the mother or they will be very close to the mother. I am a second-born child. My mother was not a fighter. That's why I know I picked up her fight. She wasn't a fighter. Oh, okay, I'll fight for you, honey. You're not going to fight Dad, I'll fight Dad, right? And so that's the second-born. Now, before you go start thinking about your children, I want you to think about your own family dynamics, okay? How you fit in your family. The third task of a system is relational, how the relationships work in the family, right? And that is about the marriage. And any unresolved issues in the marriage, whether you're talking about it or not, that child will pick up and carry the dynamics in the marriage. My sister's a third-born. She married a man very much like my daddy, only he's a preacher, but he's very much like my daddy. And my sister, as she was knee-high to a grasshopper, and she wanted to be married. These people will gravitate toward being married, or they will run from marriage. I ain't never getting married. Same dynamic. The fourth-born in the family, the fourth-born task, I want you to understand the task and then how each child picks it up. The fourth task is that of the system, nurturing the system. So all four of these functions are a part of what makes a system functional and healthy. And when you look at a family that way, Dr. Balch says, if you look at a family this way, you'll see that the fourth-born is concerned about the entire system and how the relationships work between the parents and between the siblings. Now, if you look at it, if you think about it, there are all these triangles here, right? The mother and the father and the firstborn, the mother and the father and the secondborn, and the mother and the firstborn and the secondborn. You see all these triangles? And so he has suggested that the task of the fourth-born is to look at nurturing the system. And if there's tension in the system, the fourth-born is tasked with either trying to bring system relief. They will either be clowns or they'll run and try to fix this dynamic over here with the firstborn and the thirdborn, or the mother and the sister, and they'll run back and forth and try to mitigate whatever's going on in the system. That's the role of the fourthborn. Then the pattern repeats itself. The fifthborn acts like the firstborn. The sixth acts like the second-born. The seventh acts like the third. The eighth acts like the fourth-born. And you do it again. David comes from a family of 15. When I studied this material, I went to a family gathering in Wisconsin. I was just watching all of this stuff. The children in those positions, the first, the fifth, and the ninth child, or the 10th child, whatever, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the 10th child. These children were very much like Daddy, and Daddy was a real controller, and all of them are controllers. They're all fighting, and they're fighting each other. David is the number 2. He's the first boy, but he's the number 2. The kids in 2, 6, 9, and 13, listen, he walks on water. These sisters, all of those in positions are sisters. They love their big brother, and they are tight, thick as thieves, and you can see the pattern in his family. Fascinating stuff. Is it hard and cold and fast every place? No, but there's so many instances. Like when I talk to people, I always ask, tell me your birth order. And I have an idea of some dynamics that I expect to see show up in counseling. What if you had a blended family? Now, remember, our character is set by the time we're 7, right? And so if your parents were divorced and your mom or dad got married, your stepdad or your step-parent, step-parent came in the system, the family blended together, it's those first 7 years that set the tone. If you are an only child, this is fascinating, the only child will be, again, doesn't matter the sex, they will run to either one of the parent in order to keep the peace. There's a triangle here, and they will run to either one of the parent. If the parents are fighting, they'll run to either one of the parent, all in the service of keeping the peace. And I share this again, so when you look at me and I wear makeup or I wear short dresses to your church, or I like rock and roll, you have no idea of my story. There's so many nuances to who I am. You have no idea. When Jesus said, judge not, you have no idea what my story is. And so instead of saying, ooh, what's wrong with me? The question should be, what happened to me? Entirely different mindset. What happened to me? What are you bringing into the mix as you've grown up? What happened to, I am definitely a second-born. My goodness. Oh, my word. I was such a second-born. And I was really enmeshed with my mother and had to part of my healing was to allow her to have her feelings. And if she didn't want to do anything with them, I didn't have to do anything with them. And it was really helpful for me to understand this framework for me to do my journey. And so just something, I love sharing that. So again, get your wheels a turning and understand there's so much to who we are. You're not going to pray your way out of this. You're just not. The Bible says the wisdom of the prudent is to understand his ways. That's Proverbs. The wisdom to understand your ways. What motives prompt you? What's driving you? What are you doing? You don't even know what you're doing. The servant of the Lord said Peter didn't even know what was prompting him to do what he did with Jesus. He didn't know. We don't either. But the more we get in touch with our story, the more we understand who we are, who God made us to be, the more we have access to his power so we can change not the leaves on the tree, but lay the axe to the root of the tree.